Have you ever received a message from your own mother, not to say congratulations, but to tell you to give away your company shares? I have. And it came just minutes after signing the biggest deal of my life. They didn't need me at the event. They just needed my name on the banner. My brother used the slogan I created, threw a launch party, and never invited me. I'm Rachel Whitmore, founder of Meridian Skincare, and it took me nearly a decade to realize not everyone deserves a place in the will, especially the ones who never built anything with you. If you've ever felt erased by the very people who depended on your strength, watch this. You'll learn how to protect your peace without a single argument, and how to walk away with power and dignity. I didn't yell, I didn't explain. I placed a black envelope on the mic right as the MC introduced the founding siblings. They clapped. I walked out. Not a word spoken. If your family has ever used your name without asking for your presence, don't scroll past. This might be the moment you finally learn how to take it back. Before we dive into the story, if you're enjoying these meaningful stories, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to the channel so you never miss out on more. Now, let's start the story together. I signed the biggest deal of my career in heels that pinched. The ballroom shimmered with polished brass and practiced smiles, and the champagne I didn't drink sat sweating beside my untouched plate. My name echoed in the polite applause. Rachel Whitmore, founder of Meridian Skincare, the woman who'd taken a home recipe and turned it into a national brand. I smiled for photos, shook hands that smelled of cologne and ambition, and made small talk about quarterly projections. Beneath my blazer, a silk blouse clung to the sweat of effort, of nerves disguised as grace. It was spring in Charlotte, and outside the Crescent Hotel, dogwoods had started to bloom, soft white petals brushing against warm wind. I stepped into the marble hallway for a breath. My feet ached, my shoulders too. I leaned against a gold-framed mirror and checked my phone out of habit. One new message. Give Connor a share of the company and buy him a house, or don't call yourself family. I read it twice. My mother didn't bother with pleasantries. No congratulations, no proud of you, just instructions, demands really, like always. Shock didn't land like a slap. It seeped in, like cold water in the lining of a coat. I lowered the phone and stared at the patterned carpet. Burgundy swirls against cream. The air smelled of hotel orchids and distant perfume. I sat down on a bench by the elevator. Guests walked past with clinking glasses, nodding politely, assuming I was resting from success. But inside, something shifted. Connor hadn't called me in months. Not since the last time he'd needed rent money. And before that, it had been Mom, forwarding his excuses, asking if I could just help one last time. I remembered all the times I'd said yes. The vacations I'd canceled, the nights I'd slept in my car when inventory shipments drained my account, and still, they spoke of me like a wallet with legs. You've always made yourself useful, Rachel. Just don't forget who you owe. That was Mom, years ago, after my first licensing check cleared. I had thought she meant it lovingly then. I know better now. My shoes pinched harder. I slipped one heel off, flexed my toes, and looked at my reflection in the elevator doors. Success looked good on me, but it didn't protect me from being used. I didn't reply, I didn't rage, but I knew then. I was done being their favorite resource. That message wasn't a crack in the glass. It was the light that made the crack visible. And once you see it, you can't unsee it. I didn't scream. I didn't vent. I called my lawyer. Back at my apartment, the silence was pristine, too pristine. White walls, clean counters, the faint scent of bergamot from a candle I never lit for guests. Everything in its place, just like me, just like I had taught myself to be. Connor was chaos, always had been. Missed deadlines, last-minute calls, long-winded apologies that ended with, "Can you just—" I used to tell myself that I was helping family, that they would do the same for me if tables turned. But the truth is, no one had ever offered me a chair, let alone a seat at the table. Dad used to say, "Don't stir the pot unless you're ready to eat what boils over." I used to think he meant conflict, but now I understood. Sometimes what boils over isn't anger, it's clarity. I met Jonathan Bell on a rainy Thursday. His office hadn't changed since the last time I updated my will. 2 years ago, when I thought leaving shares to Mom was an act of love. This time I came with a different kind of love, for myself. The office smelled of wood polish and old paper. A quiet tick from the wall clock marked time like a heartbeat. Jonathan looked at me over his reading glasses and waited. "I want to secure everything," I said. "My company, my name, my home, every asset." Quietly. He didn't ask why. Jonathan had been my lawyer long enough to understand that questions waste time. He opened a folder and began listing what we'd need. Irrevocable trusts, adjusted voting rights, revised healthcare proxies. A firewall built not with anger but intention. "Do you want them to know?" he asked as he handed me the final stack to sign. I looked at the neat rows of print, the signatures waiting in black ink. "Not yet," I said. "I just want to know they can't touch it." He nodded. The ticking continued. On the walk home, early spring clung to the sidewalks, wet leaves, blooming magnolias, the scent of rain still lingering in the air. Porch lights blinked on one by one as families settled in for the evening. Behind those windows there were dinner tables, TV reruns, bedtime stories. All the things I used to think I needed to earn my way into. But now, I saw it differently. I wasn't building walls to keep people out. I was finally building something to hold myself together. Not every war starts with noise. Some begin with a signature and a silence so full it echoes. They never invited me, but they used my name like it was theirs. I was folding laundry when Melissa called. I hadn't spoken to her in months, not since she took my side in a group chat and was politely cut out of the next Christmas card. Her voice on the phone was cautious, careful. "I thought you should know, there's a flyer going around for a launch dinner this Saturday. Connor's wellness thing. Your name's on it too." My fingers tightened around the warm edge of a towel. "Is it?" "Yeah, says founded by siblings Rachel and Connor Whitmore. It's at the fellowship hall. Looks like a big deal." I thanked her and hung up, then opened my laptop. There it was, the flyer. The logo was laughably close to one of my early prototypes. The slogan was mine, too, from an old email I'd once sent to Mom when brainstorming names for a sister campaign. Marrow Method, healing from the core. And now, apparently, Connor's idea, our joint venture. Except I hadn't received a single invitation. It wasn't new. They never shut me out completely. They just used pieces of me to decorate their narratives. Like Aunt Karen had said once, in a hush behind a veil of hairspray and pearls, "They won't let you disappear, honey. They'll just erase you while smiling." I drafted the cease and desist letter that night. My lawyer had already trademarked the phrase 3 months ago as part of my brand protection sweep. I had receipts, timestamps, filings, all of it wrapped in a black envelope with silver print, "To whom it may concern." On Saturday, I didn't wear heels. I didn't wear lipstick. I pulled my hair back, slid on flats, and parked 2 blocks away from the church, where I used to vacuum floors during youth retreats. The building hadn't changed. The carpet still smelled faintly of Lysol and old hymns. Inside, the fellowship hall was a mosaic of folding chairs and potluck casseroles. A few neighborhood faces nodded politely, assuming I was a guest. Connor stood near the front, shaking hands like a politician who hadn't earned the votes. Mom lingered near the punch bowl, dressed in her Sunday best, all pearls and performative grace. I didn't look at her, not yet. The MC tapped the mic, producing a familiar shriek of feedback. He smiled, cleared his throat. "Tonight, we're honored to celebrate a vision brought to life by 2 remarkable siblings, Connor and Rachel Whitmore." That was my cue. I stepped forward, not fast, not slow, just steady. I moved past the dessert table, past the cheap fern in the corner, and up to the podium. I didn't need to speak. I placed the envelope directly in front of the microphone, turned to Connor, then let my eyes find hers, my mother's. She froze, just for a moment. then blinked, like nothing had happened, but something had. Because for the first time in my life, I hadn't asked for a seat or a moment or a reason. I'd taken my place without permission. I turned and walked back the way I came, past the doors I once held open as a teenager, past the pew where I had once whispered dreams I didn't think I was allowed to chase. Outside, the night was warm for February. Somewhere behind me, applause restarted, stuttering and unsure. But I didn't stop. This time, the silence wasn't mine to carry. By the time I unlocked my car door, the first text had already landed. What the hell was that? Connor, of course. No greeting, no question, just a demand wrapped in punctuation that screamed louder than he ever had the nerve to do in person. I didn't reply. I slipped my phone face down in the cup holder and started the engine. Charlotte at night was quieter than I remembered. The street lamps hummed gently, casting amber shadows on brick buildings and manicured hedges. The church faded behind me, swallowed by street corners I knew too well. Each turn felt like a small breath, a slow uncoiling from the tension I didn't know I'd been carrying all week. Another ping. This time, a voicemail. Mom. Rachel. Her voice began soft, sweet, like she used to sound when tucking me in after a storm. I think that was a little dramatic tonight. We could have discussed things privately, you know. Families don't air grievances like that. I could almost see her smoothing a napkin across her lap as she spoke. Measured, polished, cutting. A minute later, I got the notification. Connor had posted. A photo of him smiling near the punch table, arms crossed in front of the banner. Cropped, just so. The envelope was nowhere in sight. The caption read, "Betrayed by those closest to you hurts the most, but vision can't be stolen." The likes rolled in, most from the same circle that had clapped too quickly earlier that night, but not all. A few hours later, an email slid into my inbox. It was from a vendor, Jana, who'd supplied glass jars for my first skincare line. I saw the post, just wanted to say, "I know who built what. Proud of you." I stared at the message for a long while, not because it shocked me, but because it didn't. Because it reminded me that not everyone had forgotten. Then came the text from Becca Langston, a girl from high school I hadn't seen in 15 years. "Good for you. Wish I'd had the guts when my brother tried something similar." I smiled, not at the validation, but at the quiet knowing, the way people carried stories like bruises under sleeves, never fully gone, just waiting for light to hit right. And then Aunt Karen. Her message was simple. You didn't owe them silence. That one stayed with me. At midnight, I opened my camera roll and chose a photo I'd taken weeks ago, a silhouette of me facing the Whitmore Botanicals storefront downtown. The sign was clear in the background, the place I had built, the name they had borrowed. I posted it with no caption, no hashtags, no quotes, just the truth, left bare. The comments trickled in slowly at first, then faster. Wait, she owns that? Her name was on the brand? So that story was a lie? I watched, not as someone basking in revenge, but as someone witnessing a balance long overdue. Dad used to say I had a flair for making a point without raising my voice. I don't think he ever imagined it would echo like this. I didn't write a rebuttal. I didn't call anyone. I didn't need to. The truth was loud enough on its own. They stopped calling. I stopped checking. But the silence didn't ache this time. It felt earned. It felt like walking barefoot on cool stone after a long run, not because you needed to escape, but because you finally could stop. The apartment had been still for days. No alerts, no news, no cousin texts fishing for explanations. I moved through my space like someone learning it again, reclaiming it. I rearranged a few books, not for design, but because some stories no longer fit the shelf they once had in my life. In the back of my closet, I found a worn shoebox I hadn't opened in years. Inside were old birthday cards, a boarding pass from my first trade show, and a single letter, creased, faded, but intact. My father's handwriting greeted me with that stubborn blend of capital letters and sharp slants. Rach, you're stubborn, but you'll go far. Just don't forget to rest sometimes. The world can wait. He'd written that after my college graduation. I remember reading it on the train ride back from New Haven, the ink already smudging from my fingers. Back then, it felt like approval. Now, it read like distance with a bow tied around it. He never said he was proud. He just noticed my persistence. And maybe that was all he ever had the language for. But I'd learned to stop translating scraps into warmth. Outside, the light shifted. Dusk settled over Charlotte like a slow exhale, turning everything lilac and blue. I walked up to the rooftop and leaned against the railing. The city didn't notice me, and I didn't need it to. Later that night, I took that letter and slipped it into the spine of a paperback I used to adore. A novel about daughters who chase shadows to find themselves. I hadn't opened it in years, but the margins still held my scribbles. Circles, underlines. A note. Even light bends. I taped the envelope shut. No note, no return address. At the post office the next morning, I stood in line behind a woman mailing cookies to her grandson in Oregon. When it was my turn, I simply said, "First class," and watched the clerk weigh the past in ounces. The letter wasn't a threat. It wasn't even a message, really. It was an offering, a quiet closing of a book they never finished reading. I walked out without looking back. Some people ask for closure. Others mail it one last time and never open that door again. The company kept growing. So did I, but in ways no metric could ever measure. There were no headlines, no viral clips, just the steady hum of something real taking root. I no longer checked the numbers daily. I checked the people, who smiled when they walked into work, who stayed late not out of fear but ownership. One afternoon, a junior employee, barely out of college, all enthusiasm and highlighter streak notebooks, asked me quietly, "Would you do it all again?" I sipped my tea and said, "The work? Yes, the begging? Never." She blinked like she didn't expect honesty. I didn't expect to feel proud. That evening, I took the back stairwell up to the rooftop. The air was still cool, but spring had begun to nudge its way in. Somewhere below, someone was microwaving popcorn. The city murmured, soft and indifferent. I liked it that way. I wrapped myself in an old sweater, navy blue, a little frayed at the cuffs. The sleeves still held the scent of rosemary oil from our early batches. In one hand, I held a framed printout, my very first invoice, $42 from a boutique that no longer existed. In the other, a note I had written and rewritten for years until the words finally settled. You don't have to be useful to be worthy. I placed them side by side on a small table near the railing, where the sun liked to hit around 5. No ribbon-cutting ceremony, no interview clips, just me, present. I thought of Jonathan Bell and how he never asked why, just when. I thought of Aunt Karen's quiet support. I thought of the girl from the hallway, her hands still trembling from sealing her first box of product. And I thought of myself, years ago, crouched in a borrowed car, rereading spreadsheets by flashlight. Now I looked out over a skyline that didn't owe me anything, but it was mine anyway. There were no final calls, no apologies. But peace doesn't beg to be heard. It just stays. And so did I. I stood on that rooftop not to make a statement, but simply to breathe, on my own terms, for the first time. No applause followed, but the peace stayed. Sometimes family isn't who raised you, but who respects your worth without strings. We don't have to keep proving ourselves to people who only see us as useful. In this life, dignity often begins when permission ends. If this story spoke to you, feel free to share your thoughts. Somewhere out there, someone may need the reminder too.